Hey everybody, welcome. This is Joe with Above the Tree Line, and my colleague Ruth Bradstreet is with me, and she is going to chime in whenever she deems relevant, especially if I miss anything, and then she'll be answering any questions that you might have if they come up. There is on the webinar tool that you have there, you should see a spot for questions. So if you do have any questions, feel free to type her one, or of course you can always contact us at support@abovethetreeline.com if you just want to kick back and watch. And of course we are recording this, and we'll put it on our help site and put it in newsletters and all that kind of fun stuff. So hopefully I don't say too much. But again, thanks for joining us. We are talking about the new Edelweiss Analytics that is integrated now into Edelweiss Plus, and we're pretty excited about that. We've kind of been wanting to do that ever since Edelweiss started, actually. Just needed a correct platform. I'm currently seeing a typo on the screen, so that's kind of making me nervous. So I'm going to switch here. So again, Edelweiss Analytics is a subscription service that essentially we take your point of sale data that is sent to us in a feed each night and feed it into a number of graphs and charts and ways to help you buy more intelligently and to manage your inventory in a more intelligent fashion. And there's a lot of great new stuff where you're going to see that data spread throughout Edelweiss as well to really help you buy better and smarter. This webinar today is going to be more of an overview of what the Edelweiss Analytics tools are with a little bit of how-to, but really we're going to be doing more training sessions later on. This is usually aimed at specific sorts of tasks and whatnot. So if you are a veteran user, obviously feel free to get a taste of the tools here, but then stay tuned for those deeper dives into how to use the system. And there are two different versions of the analytics tools. One is Basecamp and the other is Summit. Basecamp is essentially your comparable titles, sales and inventory data showing in Edelweiss. So as you're buying through a catalog, you can see your sales and inventory history for the comparable titles that the publishers have added to those titles. And that's some folks are using the PRH free. I just did air quotes, which you couldn't see, but it's a program that Penguin Random House was doing to get as many people on there as possible, because it just kind of helps everybody really. But if you are a PRH free store or a Basecamp store and you're interested in learning more about Summit, then you kind of come to the right place. Kind of the foundation of the analytics tools is this quote by Peter Drucker, the great management thinker. If you can't measure, you can't improve it. Of course, I had to stumble through that, but it's essentially, if you don't know what's wrong with your inventory, then you're not going to fix your inventory, and chances are there's some major issues with it. Chances are too, it's great in a lot of ways, but it's just one of those things where if you can really just dive in and look at what's happening with your inventory, without the blinders on and without anecdote. When I was a buyer, I had plenty of anecdotes about how our inventory was doing, and then I would look at the numbers and think, oh, okay, maybe not. But it's nice to combine your experience with the inventory with that hard data, and together those two things really make a powerful set of tools. So this is just a quick run through of some of the newer things that are happening, where you're going to see different pieces of analytics data throughout Edelweiss. And this is just kind of a really easy one. As you're browsing around the site, and this is if you're a Summit user, you're going to see these little check marks on titles that you either have or that you have on order. Pretty simple. And keep in mind too that the on order is not an Edelweiss order, it's an order that's actually in your point of sale system. So if you've exported your order, into your point of sale system and it's showing as a purchase order there, then it'll show here. Just kind of because there's sometimes people throw out a lot of different orders and test orders and possible orders and that sort of stuff. We don't really want to muddy the waters with those. We want like true blue official orders in there. Another one, dashboard widgets, which we're going to see as soon as I open up Edelweiss here in just a second. Just different ways for you to see that data, stuff that you might be missing and that sort of thing, just kind of right out of the gate, right as you open up Edelweiss. Pretty handy stuff. And then this, I actually like a lot. There's a little green bar that can go across the top of each title that can show you market data, on hand and sold percentages, and also on order percentages, which is especially relevant for not yet released titles. And then over on the far right, you can see your own stores data there, sales and on hand numbers and whatnot. And then with that, you can actually change the market that you're looking at there. So you can look at all indie booksellers across the country. You can look at UK indie booksellers if you want. Lots of stores in the UK are using the site. And then of course your regional stuff or even library analytics stuff. And you can actually, there's new sort options. If you sort a catalog or a list of titles, you'll be able to sort by that sold, on hand, and on order percentage as well. So you can look at any list of titles and sort it according to the most ordered title. And of course your data for comparable titles in there, first few months worth of sales, inventory, lifetime sales, etc. You can dive in and see how each title is doing, a little bit of a deeper analysis for each title as you're going through. And then coming very soon, which we are going to show you a sneak preview at the very end, is the shelf report. So this is going to be a semi-annual report sent to anybody who uses the Summit analytics right now. And again, we are going to show you this, but just some pretty cool stuff. It's a great way to really see a very, very high level view of your inventory and then kind of just start digging down, according to genres and then, your strengths and weaknesses, or relative opportunities, we'll call them. And then you can really dive into what's happening at each type of title and then dig in down to the title level and see not only what's wrong, but what you can do to fix it, which is essentially really what the analytics tools does, but this comes in a really like sweet, concise report that you can print out and that sort of thing. Again, we'll show you that here towards the end. So now we're going to dig into those inventory management tools. I'm going to switch over to the live site right now. We're going to do a little demo, going to walk you through some stuff. And again, this is going to be relatively high level, not going to dig down too deep into the nitty gritty stuff, but we will do some how to do the things sort of things. So again, thanks for joining us today, and we are going to dive in. All right, so this is Edelweiss. This is the home page, and I've taken out all the widgets except for the analytics widgets. And hopefully I don't have to say widget too many more times. It's just a weird word. But hopefully you know that you can really customize your homepage kind of as much as you want. There's this little add widget guy over here. And you can add your collections, any catalogs that you've bookmarked, buzz stuff, orders, save filters, etc. But here are the analytics stuff. So we have the most popular titles that you don't have, and then the top not yet released titles. Now, right now I have all three of these set up, but you can add more. So for example, if I wanted to add another most popular titles here and then add a saved filter to that, I can do that. So I can just say, show me the most popular titles, but I just want to see fiction or just cookbooks or whatever makes the most sense to how you buy and your emphasis on things. So again, you can customize this as much as you like. You can have 12 most popular titles, ones with various filters if you wanted. And to remove one, actually, you just click this little X guy. So again, just really think about how you use Edelweiss, how you buy the things that are important to you, and set your dashboard up accordingly. I do want to show you a little bit about those different ways in which you can see the analytics tools around Edelweiss. So I just picked a tag. This is a regional author tag. Basically just, this buyer has selected regional authors that they're interested in. You can look at this like a regular catalog view, or hopefully you've seen this by now, but you can click into an analytics view. And this is going to take that same exact number of titles and kind of give like a market top seller sort of view of it and show you how these titles are performing in your store. And right now it's based on turns. So either high turns or in this case, no sales at all. So there's no in between here. Some of these have not been released yet, but so again, we're looking at this according to turns. You can also look at this according to the shelf days thing, which we'll talk about once we dive into the analytics. So again, just kind of different ways to look at it. This is where you can look at an order from last year and add some and basically measure that and measure the success of that order. You can look at the buzz page or a catalog or any sort of collection that you might want to make. So on the old tree line, we had watch lists, and essentially watch lists are now either collections or tags or whatever sorts of list of titles that you want to make. Collections or tags are the easiest and most customizable, but then you can just look at that using the analytics view. So nice and easy. And I don't know, pretty cool. I like the idea of just being able to just, slice and dice literally any list of titles that you come up with. But again, if we're looking through here in the regular view, so this is just a regular catalog view, you'll see this little green bar here. So this is something that you can turn on and off. You can go into the other actions and turn this, make it appear or disappear. So if you find it distracting as you're going through a catalog, which could make sense, go ahead and hide it. But as you're going through, like we can see the New Hampton sides, it's on order at 51% of the stores in this market, and you can change that market and the months worth of sales that you're looking at and that sort of thing. So again, if you're a Mountains and Plains store, you can just click in there and see how a title is performing at Mountains and Plains retailers. And then for each title, you can, you want to click on this guy, the little arrows, which takes you to a presentation mode sort of thing. And from here, you can see, wholesaler data, where it is at Ingram or Baker and Taylor. You can see that peer data, which can be really helpful in, seeing kind of store by store. Now each store is going to be anonymous, as you can see, according to the region that they've placed themselves in. You see that current on hand, on order, and then historical sales, and that's given the time frame that you selected up here. So you can do that for any title, and you can also see your own point of sale action here, which for a title that hasn't come out yet, the store has ordered a dozen already. So again, you're going to see that sort of thing on every title. Now we're going to dive into the analytics tools themselves. So as you can see, the analytics tools proper live on an analytics link there at the top of your page. And once you're in there, you're able to kind of scroll down and see all the different tools available. And what's great here is that you can kind of, you can grab these and move them around if you like. I like that one on top, so I'm gonna leave it there. Or you can come in here, click on the tools at the top, and then click into analytics, and you can move these around as you see fit. If you want the catalog analysis at the top, you just pop it to the top there and click save. I don't want it at the top, so I'm not going to save it, but you can just do it really quick right there and kind of set it up how you like it. I see different stores do different things, and personally, I like how I have it set up here, which we'll go over. But you have different tools on each different lane. We're calling these lanes essentially. So you have most popular titles, not yet released titles, so that's going to be front list stuff. Stock analysis, which is going to be the ability to measure the performance of your entire inventory, either all titles, all items, including sidelines can be in there. Right now, we actually have a fiction filter set up, so you can add save filters to this, and it filters the entire page, all tools. And you'll see your point of sale filters, and then some kind of prearranged genre filters. You can see YA, sci-fi, and fantasy, all the way to mathematics or juvenile nonfiction, etc. To remove a filter, you just click the clear right there. And so you can filter according to publisher, binding, point of sale category, different levels of BISAC stuff, and they can be all combined. You can have lots and lots of different kinds of filters. If you want to see, like this one is recent hardcover literary fiction, Abrams cookbooks, for example, just kind of whatever you want to measure, you can measure here. And creating a filter is super easy. Just click on apply save filter and then add new. And I'll take you to a tool where you can add all kinds of fun stuff in here. And then you simply name it and save it. We're not going to get too into that here. So again, we're going to basically kind of quickly work down here through each of these and kind of give you an overview of what each of them does. The most popular titles is simply that. It's the most popular titles across the market that you have selected. So in this case, it is the top 100 titles across the indie trade retailers in the last month. So these are titles that are hot right this minute, and the graph itself is color-coded according to how your store is performing on them. So we have titles that are moving pretty well, 93%, which is great. Some of them are out of stock and on order, so 4 of those. One of them, We Don't Eat Our Classmates, by Ryan T. Higgins, who I kind of love, and my daughter loves him too. The Mother Bruce stuff is awesome. I think that's the right guy. So that one they don't have. They may consider bringing it in, and they have titles that are kind of dead and then titles that are doing just okay. You can set those lane preferences here, so you can choose your market. So for example, if you just want to see Southern California retailers, you can do that. You can set this back up to a year. So basically, it really depends on the task that you're performing. So do you want to see what's hot and moving right now, and make sure that you're not missing something big, or do you want to build out a category and kind of see that slightly longer tail of sales and that sort of thing? And you can also set this to the number of titles. Really kind of depends on how much time you have more than anything else. Or if you're looking at mathematics titles like we saw in the save filters there, looking at 1,000 titles is maybe kind of a waste of time. Nothing against math, but you know what I'm saying. Minimum on hand, so you can say, show me only the titles that I am currently stocking right now and how I'm performing on those. And then there's this, the shelf days thing is, it's a newer concept here in the Edelweiss Analytics, but one that I've kind of grown to love. I was skeptical at first, but now I like it. So it essentially takes the number of days that a title has been on stock multiplied by the number of copies on hand. And we can show an example here. It's like Underground Railroad here. There are 2 copies on hand. It's been 1 day since it sold, so it has a shelf day score of 2. So 2 times 1. Or if we work down the list here a little bit, Norse mythology, 5 copies on hand, 1 day since last sold, so it has a score of 5. So basically it really emphasizes those titles that you have stacks of. So if you have 10 copies of something, it needs to perform better than a title that has just 1 copy on hand, because you made a much more significant investment in that title, and it should perform accordingly. If it's not, then you're going to see that here, and hopefully do something about it, whether it's making sure it's actually on display or hand selling, all that kind of fun stuff that you do every day. If you want to see all the titles on the list, you can click here to say show all 100. You can also dive into this and see a more detailed view. You just click on view titles in grid. It'll take a second, but you can dive in here and see market information in this first column here. So that's going to be the percentage of stores that have sold this and the number of copies that they've sold. And again, that's in the time frame that you selected, so that we're looking at a single month worth of sales. And then percentage stocked, number of items stocked, and then ordered, along with the average order there, which especially in the not yet released stuff can be really helpful to see. An average order of 85 means something different than an average order of 2, something very obvious. Like maybe don't order just 2. Then of course the regular old bibliographic sort of stuff here. If you want to see more about a title, you click on the title itself and you'll see this view again, and you can dive in and see that wholesaler information. If you have any markups from your sales reps on that particular title, you'll see them here. Peer reviews and shelves show up. And then we dive into basically the score for this title. So has a shelf day score of 1, 4 sales, 1 copy on hand, had 2 copies on order, last sold yesterday, and last received on 7/12, and then the different point of sale categories that this has been in. And then in the actions, you can tag, add to collection, write a review if you want, all that normal stuff. But really the tag and add to collection would be what you would most likely be working on there. Then to close that back up, you collapse title grid. And then we'll move on down to the not yet released. So these are going to be titles that are not out yet. You can set the publication date for that actually. Right now we're looking at titles that were that come out in September. This is how I personally like to do this. Is in my head it's August already, so I'm looking 1 month ahead to make sure that I know what's coming out, what the bigger titles are that are coming out, how I'm positioned with those, and then I have time to react to that, whether it's upping my order with the publisher or putting on back order with the wholesaler, or whatever you want to do to make sure that something that you may have missed is on its way. So again, you can change the market, number of titles. Minimum on hand doesn't make a whole lot of sense in this particular graph, so I would personally ignore that because hopefully you don't have these on hand. Keep in mind that you can also set that publication date range here. You can, if you want to, say just show me stuff that comes out after September, or if you include this upper bound, which is the option, is you can set that upper bound date as well. And again, you can set the shelf days thing there if you like. With the shelf days, so in the not yet released titles, not going to be as much of an issue. Really, more what we're looking at here is either on order or not on order, really. And you can see that this is separated. Yellow is on order and red is not. So there are 5 out of the 100 titles that this store does not have on order. It could be because they don't want them, which is fine, of course. Or it could be that they missed them. Or again, this is based on orders that are in your point of sale system. So it could be that the store hasn't yet updated or uploaded an order to their POS. Sorry for stumbling there. So just make sure you keep up on that, just for your own sanity and bookkeeping and that sort of stuff, but also just so you know what's coming out, what you're missing. It is easy to miss stuff in front list. It could be a drop in or whatever. So now we're looking at titles, again, that the store hasn't ordered at all. You can view these titles in the grid. And then, if these are titles that you want to bring in, then, you can come in here, you can select all of these, do other actions, you can export this to a file. You can add these to a collection if you want, and then create an order from there, kind of whatever makes the most sense for you to be able to keep track of these titles and make sure that you're getting them in. All right, that's not the not yet released. Now the stock analysis is kind of where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. This is where you can really, really dig into your own inventory and see how you're doing. The store that we're looking at is quite good at this. The majority of their store is moving, and again, so this in stock, fresh and hot is according to those shelf days. A decent chunk are considered stable, so they have sold within the last year, but not necessarily recently, or there's multiple copies on hand, that sort of thing. And only 3%, 3.4% would be considered stale or cool. And these are titles that are the titles that are eligible, I would say, for returns or throwing on a stock list, a sales cart or that sort of thing. A lot of them you're going to see are going to be like more regional stuff or sidelines and that sort of thing. These guys are really, 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 really aggressive with their returns, and their inventory shows it at great advantage. To be blunt, the average that we see here is 20 or 25, which is a lot. That's a lot of titles to not be selling. So reconsider that, I would say, if you look at that and see your store is just kind of sitting on a whole bunch of stock that your customers don't apparently want. Not to be poopy about it. But oh, I did skip one thing I do want to show you. Sorry, this is great. So the best example, I think, is not yet released titles. Right now we're looking at all titles, the ones that we don't have on order. You can create an automated email to come to you. Just click this little envelope guy here, and this is going to go to my email. I can name it whatever I want. I would name it something that you're going to know what you're looking at. Don't do daily. That's crazy. If you do this weekly or monthly, you're going to have kind of a nice, constant, regular alert sent to your email address that lets you know basically titles that are coming out that you don't have on order. It's a great thing, and it's a good looking email. You should set one up for yourself and check it out. Didn't want to miss that, sorry. So again, the stock analysis, great way to just check out the health of your store. And this is a great place too to add a saved filter. For example, if you want to see how you are doing with YA science fiction and fantasy, you can add that filter in here and check it out. And again, it adds the filter to everything on the page, all the tools. Oh, I love these books. This is a book that hasn't sold in a while. You can see that shelf days score is 460. So 2 copies haven't sold in 230 days. So realistically speaking, at least returning one of those might behoove them, or hand selling this one because it's awesome. But you can see for the most part, for those titles that this store has brought in, they're doing pretty good. 72% are cranking, and 26% are just doing okay. And then just one title has just been languishing there. So really pretty great and worth knowing. Those are titles that people like and people are buying at your store, or at the very least, whoever buys this is doing a great job, which is always worth knowing. With this, I'm going to pop in here real quick and view the titles in a grid again. I think I just clicked it like 4 times on accident, sorry. So as you're going through here, you can sort this list according to shelf days or last sold date, kind of whatever sorts of things you would find the most helpful. So market stuff or your own location. And then you can come in here and select titles. We're going to select them all here just for giggles. And then if you're wanting to create a list of titles to return, a pull list, you export this to file. You can select whatever format you have. This is going to be either your point of sale system or any custom exports that you created. This E+ Analytics format is super relevant. It actually shows all the columns and tools that you see in this existing list that we're looking at. And you click create, and that's going to create a Excel file that you can then do what you please with. So again, that stock analysis, great place to stop and take a little bit of time and just see how you're doing. Then in the historical overview, you're able to see on 4 different measures: sales, inventory, turns, and then unit sales. So the number of units that have moved month to month. You're able to see basically how this particular, in this case, YA science fiction and fantasy is doing. You can set time frame here. I like looking at a year back. You can set it however you like there. You get a nice overview of what's happening, total sales for that time frame, average inventory, and then the turns. 5.2 is pretty decent. Clicking on each of these peaks or valleys on here will bring up a list of titles that sold, for example. So if you want to see what sold in March, why that little spike was there, you can pull that up. It'll load a title, and you see What Went, which is Poison by Bridget Zinn, did quite well. So and again, you can see how your inventory trends go year to year. The red is the last 12 months, and the blue are the 12 months previous to that, and the ups and downs of turns month to month, etc. And again, you can set filters for this. If you want to see the entire store, just come in here and clean that filter out. So we like that one. This is kind of your report card, essentially. Which if you're doing great, you love to look at. If you're not, it can be kind of painful. This is actually my favorite one, the category performance comparison. So this is going to take whatever classification of titles that you select. In this case, we're looking at BIZAC. You can also look at point of sale categories, Dewey, age groups, that sort of stuff. BIZAC is really, really helpful here. I think, of course, looking at your own point of sale is great too. There's some stuff you can do with BIZAC because it has so many sub-genres where you can really dive in and see what's happening. So in this case, this is going to take all the BIZAC categories and it explodes them out. I just did a big hand motion pointing here. It explodes them out according to inventory size, smallest to largest, and inventory turns, lowest to highest. So your largest and best turning categories are going to be up here in the far right, and your largest and least turning categories are going to be down here in the red. Conversely, your smallest categories are over on the far left. So we can just kind of see a cascade of where this particular store is overstocked, and then kind of work our way up through there. And essentially the stuff in the dark green you could consider is balanced, and as much as the size is commensurate with the sales, or at least turns, if that makes sense. What's great here is you can open the category summary report and see details about how each of them are performing. So you can see, antiques and collectibles is a very small percentage of the store, very small percentage of the sales, pretty balanced really. You can see basically, what you've invested there, how much it's making for you, what your turns are. Maybe this is a growth opportunity for you. Maybe it's just great. Kind of depends on the physical space you have, whether or not there's a whole bunch of antiques and collectibles titles out there just itching to be sold, that sort of stuff. If you click here, you're going to explode fiction out into its subgenres. So you create a temporary category here of fiction. I'll give this just a sec here. So essentially the idea behind this particular graph is that you find a problem category that either needs to be returned or needs to be beefed up a little bit, and then you can essentially fix that problem. I just did a little refresh. Sometimes if you get a little click happy, it just needs a second to catch up. Like just scrolling through and looking how each thing is doing. So again, we created a temporary filter for fiction, so that actually filters everything on the page according to fiction. So it's going to reset each of the lanes in here, and then you're going to be able to see, biographical fiction is overstocked, small town and rural fiction is overstocked, and you can see how each of those are doing. Again, how overstocked are they? Then if you click into mystery, for example, it's going to explode out the different subgenres of mystery titles. So, amateur sleuth versus cozy mysteries versus hard-boiled mysteries. What are your customers buying? And how are you stocking those? Are you stocking them correctly, basically? Really cool. And then, of course, so we've now created a temporary category filter of mystery and detective. So we collapse that grid. We're going to be able to see that all the other things are going to be kind of portioned out according to those subgenres of things. And again, you can open the category summary report, see how those are doing. You can print that to Excel if you like. Fun stuff. I really like that one. The next one is the catalog analysis, which is useful and is also potentially a little redundant. Now that we've added the ability to view any list of titles in the analytics view, which we showed you earlier. But essentially what you can do here is take any catalog, whether it's a publisher generated catalog, or in this case, a collection that I made. So I just basically grabbed a bunch of random titles and called it fiction staff picks. But you can go in and grab those if you want to look at the Macmillan Fall 2017 catalog and see how that has performed for you. That sort of stuff you can dig in here. And again, it applies that shelf days measurement to this particular list of titles, and you can see what you're doing great with, what's just doing okay, what's on order, yada, yada. And again, we do have this set to that temporary category filter, and we can clear that out just by clicking there. So if you do use that temporary filter, just make sure that you cleared out if you're finished using it. It can be tricky to remember sometimes. What's kind of great too is there are a couple of multi-store specific tools that we have in place here as well. So if you have multiple locations, you also see the location comparison and the location performance comparison. So the location performance comparison actually feels a lot like that category performance comparison, just at a much higher macro level. So it's going to take your different locations and portion them out according to their performance, either across all titles or according to whatever save filter you selected here. So in this case, literary fiction is heavily stocked, but not so heavily bought, essentially, at the demonstration 2 store, and then pretty light on the demonstration 3, etc. So you can kind of see, of your locations, which one, does mysteries well, or which one is best at kids' books and that sort of stuff. And then, of course, you can open that location summary report and see details for those. See, percentage of total sales, percentage of total inventory, all that kind of fun stuff. You can also see the location comparison. So this is going to take your whatever location you choose at the top. In this case, we're going to compare demonstration 2 store against demonstration 1. So this is going to show titles that are only at demo 1. Basically titles that are at demo 1 that demo 2 does not have. So of the literary fiction titles, the store does pretty well. Demo 2 doesn't have any of these titles, and maybe they should if the store is doing so well with them. Or maybe one store does better with a certain type of title that is overstocked at one store, and you can move those to another store. Maybe it's kind of however you want to operate, however you want to use this information is quite up to you. Lots of possibilities there, though. All right, so the next thing we're going to do, kind of getting down to the end here, is a sneak preview of the shelf report. So again, this is a brand new thing. I know some people have heard about it. Some of you, we're going to start sending these out this month. And again, if you're a Summit store, you're going to be able to see this and play around with it. Basically, what we're doing is showing the entire store according to 4 different measures. It's a freshness, relevance, hit rate, and turnover. So freshness are essentially your entire inventory and how it performs according to those shelf days. So, what percentage of your inventory is selling, essentially, is what this is measuring. And then the relevance is going to be, of the top selling titles, how many do you have? Basically, are you missing a lot of big titles? Hit rate is kind of my new favorite thing in that data nerd sort of way. But this takes all the newly published titles that you have purchased for your store and measures how those sold, whether or not they sold. Some have sold great, some have sold just okay, others didn't sell at all. And that can really, really inform your buying. You don't have to have 100% hit rate on everything, of course, that's crazy. But if your hit rate is like 20%, then there's something wrong with how you're buying, and you may have a different idea of what your customers want than what reality actually shows, to be blunt. And then, of course, turns is the last one. You can look at this in a lot of different ways. Clicking this little jump to will let you jump to each of the different sorts of things, different genres and whatnot. Because we are comparing a lot of market stuff, we've created different genres to measure. So it's not going to be your point of sale stuff because that doesn't work when looking across the market. But you can see, we're going to pop through here. That's just some how-to stuff, the table of contents, and then so we can see, the top 15 parts of this store, and then the bottom 15. So those categories that need the most help are just right here. We can see how the store breaks down according to each of these measures. So, which are super fresh and which are a little bit stale, what's average, that kind of stuff. Then the relevance, of course, like how is a store positioned with the big titles that everybody else is selling really well. And you just kind of play around through there. This is going to take each of those genres and explode it out according to where you're at and where the market average is. So, if you're doing quite a bit better than the average, then there's going to be a lot of green on here. A lot of orange and yellow and red is going to be not as good. Essentially, it's going to be showing that you're below average. So most of your peers are performing better in that particular genre than you. And it's worth noting too that these are performance relative to your peers instead of relative to your other categories. So it's not like comparing, comics and graphic novels to literary fiction and saying, what, comics and graphic novels isn't doing very well, which is not even remotely relevant. So it is actually comparing your comics and graphic novels performance to the comics and graphic novels performance of your peers. So other Summit stores, essentially. And this is a pretty cool freshness summary. So it's each of these, we're going to see each of those 4 measures kind of exploded out according to their genres and which of the genres are performing above average or at or below average or significantly below average. I'm going to jump into a good one. Let's do mysteries. So then we can dive into, the mystery thriller category, see how big it is, what percentage of the inventory it takes up, and then see, 84% of this category for this store is above average. So it's performing well in comparison to their peers. There are 40 stale titles. So out of 250 titles, 40 of them are stale. And you can see, if we kind of look at this as a whole package sort of thing, you can see that the turns are 2.4, which is okay. Over 3 is better. Over 5 is better, but over 3 would be the usual aim. So this is worth looking at to me. So looking, at titles that are stale, titles that should maybe just go away. This is a good example. There's 10 copies of this that haven't sold in a very long time. Worth looking at, whether those are actually there or not. But yeah, so we can see titles that are stale, customers just don't want them. And then you can, in the very next one, you can see titles that are selling really well, in this case, at over 50% of all your peers. So this was an accident, but there's 40 stale titles and they're missing 41 titles that are selling really well elsewhere. So a pretty clear case for just a straight swap out. Return these, bring these in. You see that these are doing quite well. You can export this to a CSV if you want. Also, if you click on the title, it's going to take you right to that title page in Edelweiss. So you can see more information about it, add it to an order if you want, that sort of thing. So I really like that, just the ability to see, what's just bogged down. What do your customers not care about? Also, what have you not shown them? And again, like I said this earlier, it's really easy to miss titles, and it's okay to miss titles, but you have tools available to you to help catch those titles and make sure that they don't remain missed. Then the hit rate, I think, again, I mentioned this. This is great. I think out of the 288 new releases, that's titles that have been published in the last 3 to 15 months that this store has brought in this particular genre. 11 did good, which good is 10 sales or more. 171 did okay, so 1 to 10 sales, and then 106 didn't sell at all. So out of all those titles, a decent chunk didn't move at all, and that's worth knowing. Definitely worth knowing that maybe you're investing those front list dollars in places that you shouldn't, or vice versa. I've seen, just looking around and doing different demo things. I've seen a lot of stores that are doing great. Just like the DOA, the dead on arrival titles are very, very, very low, which is awesome. Just fewer titles to return, basically. And then, of course, turns, which everybody's relatively familiar with. In a sense, the higher the better, although at some point you're maybe too high. But you can see, your average copies, the percentage of your inventory that this particular genre takes up, that sort of thing. And you can flip through here and see, romance titles, etc. You can jump to kids stuff, adult fiction, nonfiction, etc. You can also dive in and see the raw data. So we're looking at each of those genres, kind of exploded out according to, the percentage of fresh, relevant, hit rate, etc. Essentially, like how this particular store performs in comparison to their peers. And at the very end is how these measurements were made, basically. So that's kind of the quick nitty-gritty of the shelf report. I do want to point out right quick here, do a little finagling. There are help documents, analytics-help.edelweiss.plus, and these are written so each of those tools is kind of pretty succinctly explained. Well, I wrote them, so hopefully they're succinct. There's also a shelf report one there. You should be able to get any questions that you might have answered there. And then, of course, as always, you can contact us at support@abovethetreeline.com in order to get those questions answered too. And again, stay tuned. We are doing more in-depth training coming up. I think the next one is actually going to be specifically on using the analytics tools to do returns. It's just kind of one that's near and dear to my heart. Just return the titles. It's a crazy loophole in the book industry that you should take advantage of. Okay, again, thank you guys for joining today. And if you do have questions, just to reiterate, that support@abovethetreeline.com is your best bet. Right? Thanks, guys.